Yeah, I pee when I sit down. I sit down when I pee sometimes, okay? I'm not less of a man because of it. I'm not less of a man!
Midwest Emo, a music genre for nerdy guys from the suburbs that have panic attacks when they try to order pizza over the phone. Made by other nerdy guys that can't sing, can't play instruments, or write songs. So how did they get so big as a genre? Where did they come from? Where did they go? Where did they come from? Midwest Emo.
Throwback to around the mid-1980s in Washington, D.C., emo was born as the child of hardcore and punk. Out of our nation's itty-bitty capital, a band called Rites of Spring released their only album, self-titled, in 1985, and unknowingly laid down the groundwork for emo. Through a blend of personal and emotional lyrics and the intense, in-your-face sound of hardcore, Rites of Spring stuck out compared to other hardcore and punk acts of that time. To get an idea of what I mean, take a look at the lyrics of their song Spring. Caught in a time so far away from where our hearts really wanted to be, reaching out to find a way to get back to where we'd been.
Yeah, bro was certainly down bad.
And yet, even though Rites of Spring clearly had captured something unique with their expression of such deep emotions, the sound wasn't even initially thought of as emo. People had generally referred to Rites of Spring and others as emo-core, but Ian MacKaye, the musician behind such famous hardcore acts as Fugazi and Minor Threat, who was also a major force in developing the work of Rites of Spring, thought that the term emo-core was, quote, the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Even the frontman of Rites of Spring would go on to say the following about the emo label. I've never thought of emo as a genre of music. I always thought it was the most term ever. Emo, of course, would only grown its popularity as a way to describe the sound and aesthetics from bands like Rites of Spring and others of that time, as people in the scenes around the US had heard the music and would be inspired from it.
In the 90s, emo was given more of a chance by record labels due to the popularity of grunge at the time, with bands such as Sunny Day Real Estate releasing their emo masterpiece, Dairy, as well as other bands like Jawbreaker, and even bands that weren't necessarily emo, such as Weezer, with their Volcel-inspired album, Pinkerton.
However, more and more of these underground artists and scenes had caught the attention of the mainstream. Different bands and styles were taking control over how people saw emo, splitting it into two directions. The mainstream direction, pushed by whatever sounds caught on best with the larger audiences, and the other direction, which was finding itself in every Culver's parking lot in the Midwest. Bands all over the region had been experimenting and been helping to create the new sound in emo, which would, of course, be called Midwest Emo.
What exactly was it about the Midwest that was making it a breeding ground for emo artists? Was it the sweet Midwestern air, the water, the mid that they were smoking? Despite the subgenre's name, not all bands in the genre were exclusively from the Midwest. It came from the style and sound that had been developed with the bands from that area, such as Captain Jazz, Braid, The Promise Ring, Mineral, and of course the biggest bird of Midwest emo.
Simple, ordinary, unembellished, unmistakable, crystal clear, as frank as Frankenstein, as blunt as an atom bomb.
American football.
With their first release, self-titled, or LP1 in 1998, American Football really helped to push the genre of emo into something much more distinct than just sadder or slower hardcore. They brought arpeggiated guitars and the use of strange time signatures to the game. This nerdy math rock sound draws in the absolute biggest big head nerds, and I mean like Sheen from the episode of Jimmy Neutron, where he becomes a genius, like those kinds of nerds.
If a picture speaks 1,000 words, then this one sits you down, cries about its ex-girlfriend, and then starts badgering you for sex. It's a house in the city of Urbana, Illinois, at night with the window lit up. So simple, but that's where the power of it stands. It ruffles up the somber memories and emotions of your own life and allows you to project them onto it.
This album captured everything about the 90s Midwest emo scene so perfectly, but the 90s was never meant to last. The 2000s were waiting, lugubriously, around the corner to come in and change absolutely everything, including emo music. Was this the end of Midwest emo? Well, Midwest emo missed mainstream success during its run, and something else took its place. What was it exactly? It still had the same themes and overall lack of testosterone that emo has always had, but it was poppier and was able to be used as a soundtrack for teen movies about road trips and sexual escapades with baked goods. If you grew up in the 2000s like us, the form emo took on might still be the one you're most familiar with, more commonly known as pop punk.
In the early 2000s, we were treated to acts such as Jimmy Eat World, Taking Back Sunday, and Dashboard Confessional. A lot of people don't realize how popular Dashboard was, because they were on the soundtrack for Shrek 2. Shrek 2. But that was only the beginning. Does My Chemical Romance ring a bell? Hello, Panic at the Disco, Misery Business by Machine Gun Kelly. Even though these pop-punk groups brought in influences from more than just emo, they had a dark, angsty, and sometimes quirky look that was just easier to call emo. And I can say that with confidence because that's how I remember it when I was younger. I remember in the 7th grade, I had a crush on and she wore a Pierce the Veil shirt every day, and she would always talk about how emo she was. And I was like, wow, I need to lie and say I'm emo too, so I did that. But when she was 14, in freshman year of high school,
I also have a lot of good memories dancing to Fall Out Boy's Dance Dance on DDR at the local community center. All of these memories forming the idea of what emo was in our heads. And as fast as these memories came, they had slowly and quietly gone away, just like pop punk and emo did. These bands from the 2000s shifted away from the pop-punk sound so they could explore new projects. And with major players leaving pop-punk, so did the focus of our culture leaving in favor of new music that was taking hold.
And it also didn't help that a lot of these bands were facing a bunch of allegations at the time. To put it simply, some fell off and some fell off really bad.
With emo falling from its Hawthorne heights and Midwest emo never catching on commercially in the 90s, where was emo going to go in the 2010s? Would it be stuck in that 2000s time period? Would it be associated with metalcore like Pierce the Veil and Bring Me the Horizon, where it might lose touch with its roots? Or could it only survive through emo rap, like Lil Peep, XXXTentacion, and 6ix9ine? Could emo ever come back?
There in the quiet ashes of pop-punk, emo had burst through with its flannel-covered arm out of the ruins, clasping for its cracked, thick-rimmed glasses, and it had a hunger to tap guitars, use really weird time signatures, and make some sad, sad songs. It was back from the dead, and Midwest emo was alive in the underground.
Bands were coming out in the 2010s that took inspiration from Midwest emo in the 90s, and were now able to release their music for a much larger audience through the help of the internet. Bands like The World is a Beautiful Place and I'm No Longer Afraid to Die, The Hotelier, The Brave Little Abacus, Algernon Cadwallader, and many others helped to carry Midwest emo, giving new life to all the sounds and aesthetics of 90s Midwest emo, but for the new generation. These bands, combined with other bands in the comeback of underground pop-punk emo like Joyce Manor, Tiger's Jaw, Modern Baseball, and even bands that went harder like Title Fight and Citizen, would all help to breathe life back into emo for a new generation of fans.
Looking back, maybe the problem with Midwest emo fans isn't that they're nerds, or dress bad, or are annoying, or can't play instruments.
Maybe the problem was that the artists coming from the Midwest emo scene couldn't make it in the mainstream. At least, they couldn't do it while making the music that they made. Midwest emo in the 90s captured this really specific feeling, this specific time and place. It's called Midwest emo for a reason, not national emo or USA emo. It lacked the wide appeal that a record label was looking for. From another perspective, does it matter if it never caught on in the mainstream? Midwest emo still touches the hearts of so many, not just because of the great music, but also in part because pop punk became so famous. Pop punk inspired people to seek out more than just what they were sold as emo, and to dive into the history of the genre. We can see the result of this pop punk and Midwest emo influence on the bands of today that combine aspects from both, like Hot Mulligan, Mom Jeans, Prince Daddy and the Hyena, and so many more.
Midwest emo will never die, unless the Midwest is totally nuked or something like that. But even then, the sound will go on and resonate with people for generations to come. Because when these future kids listen to Midwest emo, new and old, they'll take comfort in the sad lyrics, the math rock riffs, and the twinks with twinkly guitars. And they'll know that there's always a place for them in this world. Ohio.
Neopunk FM.